What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a Life Warrior podcast. Hadn't done one in a minute. Life takes its toll sometimes, and everybody gets busy in life, and that's what I always call doing Life Warrior shit. And so that's what's been going on. But here we are. I'm I'm excited about this one because it touches on a lot of stuff that I've been talking about before. But Jeff is the first one that has agreed to come on and talk about what we're fixing to talk about with me. My own brother's been through it, and he's not ready. He's not ready to discuss any of it yet. So I appreciate you coming on. We're going to try and, push this thing a lot. So what we're talking about today is basically the use of what you would call psychedelics, right? For treatment of PTSD, they have it also for addiction, and things like that. So, and Jeff's been through it. So, y'all, this is Jeff Tannery. He is a veteran of the United States Army. He did total time of service is 25 years. I'm reading all this because there's so much of it. 5 years in the Corps of Engineers, 3 years in artillery, 17 years in Special Forces, 10 of that as a Special Forces medic, which him and I have a little bit of that in common. I did that medic thing for 22 years, and man, the medic thing, being a firefighter was awesome. Being a medic, not so much, in my opinion, but because no firefighter hires on and goes, hey, I can't wait to be a paramedic, and so I know there are guys in the military probably that's their thing. They probably, and there were medics that I knew that was their thing, and but for me it wasn't so much, but it was obviously necessary. So you were a paramedic within special ops, did emergency routine medical care, did training, all that. You did 7 years managing special forces operations, served as team sergeant of an operational detachment, Alpha, responsible for training operations and planning, leadership, and joint and multinational missions. Served as a senior enlisted advisor, chief instructor of training unit, trained joint special operations. Man, you've been through it, man. Multiple combat operations and rotations in Afghanistan and Philippines, which you're the first one I've talked to that everybody else I've talked to has been, Iraq, Afghanistan. You're the first one that, and it's something people forget about. Philippines, there's some shit that happened
Yeah,
in the
yeah.
Philippines.
Under the same umbrella, the Operation Enduring Freedom umbrella. You had Afghanistan, we had the Philippines. There was also some stuff going on in Colombia. It was all under, the combating terrorism worldwide umbrella.
Yeah,
Without going into too much detail, it's just, we
right.
were all the time.
Yeah. So you say special forces, but in the Army there's several different branches of that special forces, right? And what were you?
Well, there's the overarching umbrella in the Army and in Joint Force Special Operations. Within Special Operations, you have the SEALs, the Rangers, the Marine Special Operations, otherwise known as MARSOC. In the Air Force, you have the pararescue jumpers, the PJs, the CCTs.
Yeah.
The Special Forces comes in, and it's specifically to describe Green Berets. So Green Berets, and there are some other tier 1 units that fall under that umbrella as well, but they do what they do, and
Yeah.
the Special Forces is specifically Green Berets.
Awesome. Yeah. That was something I didn't truly understand. Like I said, my brother was, 31 years in the Army, and he did 5 tours in Iraq. And when he was in Panama was his first, that's when he got in. That was his first combat experience, which
So
sent,
he's young like me.
yeah, yeah. It's, it was interesting to hear him talk about Panama, the how wild ass it was down there. Um, but then he was in Bosnia too, I guess, during that whole Milosevic thing going on over there. I don't remember what years that was, but man, that must have been wild too. And I haven't really talked to him about any of that because for years he didn't want to talk about it, and he wasn't in a point where he wanted to talk about things. And that's kind of where we are now with this podcast that we're doing. So with all that, we talked about this before. I didn't really want this to, you didn't necessarily want this to be about service. And I get it. It's like a firefighter, people ask me, it's just like somebody coming going, hey, what's the worst call you've ever been on? And you're like, man, I don't want to talk about all that. And then people tell you, you're a real hero. And I'm like, no, I'm really not. I'm just, I was collecting a paycheck. I was, I knew what my job was. And, sometimes that meant putting your life in a position that might have cost you your life. I mean, it was just, I didn't see it that way. And I know my brother was the same way with his stuff.
That's kind of how we looked at it. Everybody, to get into any special operations, special forces, you volunteer. So you know full well what you're getting in. You're volunteer. Right. You want to do it. You're willing to do it. And God willing, you pass the test and you get to do it. Right. But, going back to not wanting to make this whole thing about what I did in the Army and military service, it's just, it tends to go that way when we start talking about it because it's hard to sum up 25 years of service in a conversation. So that tends to lead the conversation. But my focus for this is to guide people on how what we're going to talk about soon can help you get over stuff like that. Because, I wasn't a Medal of Honor winner, some great war hero. I prided myself in the fact that I did what needed to be done. I did my job. I led my team. We got everybody in. God willing, we brought everybody home. Right. To me, that was the victory. But what that leaves you with, as well as, as you know, it's the same thing in the fire department. You come across things, you see things, you experience things. And whether you want to or not, that stuff sticks with you. And it starts to climb all over you, in your brain, in your body, and it permeates into your family life, your just the way you conduct yourself, and it starts to overpower. And you get to a point, and a lot of people get to a point where, number one, they don't see it. And number two, even when they want to do something about it, you literally sit there and you're like, what do I do? And there's not a lot of people that can just give you a pamphlet that says follow these steps because everybody's experience is different.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that was for me. And, I think we talked about this a little bit. I went through, 6 or 7 different therapists, and everybody's like, oh, you should try EMDR and you should try, and I did all that stuff. And I was just like, man, it was so frustrating because I would, I remember doing EMDR. I don't know if you have ever done that.
What does it stand for again?
I don't really even remember what it stands for, but literally, man, it's more technical, but this lady was doing it, and she breaks out this little device, and she hands me these 2 things that I hold in my hand and in my hands, and it's hooked up to this other little bitty device, and I don't even know the whole. I'm not gonna make myself stupid and go, I know all about this, But what all I can say is it felt like I was in a skit. Like you're gonna hold these and these electrical pulses are gonna in your hands, and you were gonna repeat things over and over again, and you know it's gonna alter your brain, all this stuff. And I'm looking at this device, and I'm like, I swear to God, you made that in your kitchen earlier today. You know,
I've heard of that, but I can't say I had the pleasure of experiencing it.
it was like whatever. What's the religion Tom Hanks is all in uh
Tom Cruise,
Tom
the
Cruise, yeah. uh they've got that device where they say it takes you back to your past and clears your brain. That's what I kept thinking. Holy crap, that's what you're doing right now. And I left there and I was like, I ain't ever coming back to this. So
yeah.
I've been through all that, and finally I just found a guy that was a regular guy, and he was helpful. He was like, man, we just got to find something where you can something in your life that was impactful, and you where you were at your happiest, and you take your brain back there for a while, almost like meditation. You take your brain back to those places, calm you down a little bit. And that made more sense to me. I was like, all right, so we figured that out, and he's like, yeah, well, you just go back there. And for me it made sense, but it took 6 or 7 of those guys to get there. But even you and I have talked off camera. I'm nowhere near perfect right now,
Nobody
and,
is.
so which is where this comes in, and this is why I'm so excited about talking about it. So I'll just let you explain what your experience has been. You tell what you want to tell.
Okay. In my military service, accidents happen. Um, I had the normal run of injuries, the messed up knees, the ankles, the backs, the aches and pains. I had a couple of good TBIs, traumatic brain injuries, that both involved skull fractures, brain bleeds. The last one, which was a year before I retired, um, when it happened, I started throwing seeds. My heart stopped, care flighted, woke up 3 days later as they're pulling the breathing tube out, and I was like, oh, what happened?
Yeah.
um, all of that melds together. And alongside that, when I was going through my career, there comes a point where once you get high enough in rank in Army forces, your team time is done. You're 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 done at the team level. It's no more fun with the boys. You're gonna go ride a desk. You're gonna do admin stuff. You're gonna get more into operations and planning and staff exercises. When that happened, I didn't adjust well to that. I was already known as Angry Jeff throughout the hallways and units. Um, it's like we talked about before. I would wake up at level 8.5 on the anger scale, and that's just where I go. It comes from years and years of high stress, highly active environments. It's a coping mechanism, and you either make it work for you or it doesn't. So all of that combined, and then being yanked from the teams, put me right into a psychologist's office. Because all of a
Right.
sudden, I went to super angry. I didn't want to work. I didn't want to cooperate. I didn't know what the deal was. So you go in there, and that's when you start getting the acronyms in your medical file: the PTSD, the anger issues, the anxiety, the depression. And I was so from experience that just pisses you off more.
Yep.
So a third thing that was going on, and this probably started, it really kicked in once I started deploying uh, back in the mid 2000s, is the drinking. It started out drinking on the weekends, and then it started out, it kind of went, it's like, okay, well, it's a 3 weekend or it's a 4-day weekend, so I can tack on Friday and a Monday. And then it just did that either way. And pretty soon I was drinking every night. And I was never drunk at work. I always kept that line where, it was safety first, whatever we were doing. But once I got home, all bets were off.
Yeah.
I disconnected. And later we can go into this too. That causes all kinds of family problems and everything else.
Yep.
The swirl that was just building up years and years and getting worse, constantly coping, constantly making stuff happen. In and out of the psych office, and then the final head injury, and then comes retirement. So it got to a point, I basically dropped my retirement package. A month later, I got that big bad head injury, the last one. So I get out of the hospital. I'm going in and out of treatment centers. I come back to the unit, and they looked at me and said, well, you finally messed yourself up bad enough that you can get a medical. But since you already got your retirement paperwork in, you can just ride retirement, so at least you know your schedule. And me and all my great mental capacity with a head injury, I was like, oh yeah, let's just do the regular retirement. To this day, I still couldn't tell you what class I sat in or what they were talking about. I basically signed my way through all of the transition classes and all that time still heavily drinking, doing whatever I wanted to do. Only now they weren't requiring me to come to work all the time because I was getting ready to be done. So it really kicked in.
Yeah.
The drinking, the extra free time, doing whatever I wanted. So pretty soon it's time to relocate after retirement from Washington State back down to Texas to be a family. Well, that brought a few stressors.
Right.
The kid in school, the family issues because of my drinking and my disconnection, the anger that's there all the time. And I took a few months off and thought I was getting my head straight. But after a while, I decided that I was ready to go to work. So I took a couple of small jobs around the house. Like I worked part-time at Lowe's for a little bit just to kind of get used to
Right.
being around regular people.
Yeah.
And once I networked and found an opportunity working project management for a construction company,
Yeah.
that's what I had in it. I started doing it. I thought that I was still that high-performing individual, and I was still the master of everything, even though I was the new guy.
Right.
And I got to this place, and I'm being me. I'm working. I'm seeing things are wrong. I'm fixing them like that. I'm getting my projects done. I'm handling issues that might come up with people. And this place was owned and managed and operated by some retired firemen. Great guys. One in particular was in charge of operations. And he's the one that I basically contacted about the job and interviewed. And I had the most contact with because he was the operations guy and I was one of the project managers.
Yeah.
And I had a couple of dust ups with some people at work and some customers that just had bad interactions, and I couldn't figure out why. Because, I'm right all the time.
Right.
And he set me aside and he goes, dude, are you okay? And I looked at him and I was like, what do you mean? Yeah, I'm fine. He goes, you're not fine. And I was like, what do you? So we got into a big argument and it became one of those what the hell sessions. And he let me know how he had a brother-in-law who was a retired Navy SEAL. And through the brother-in-law, he found out about the psychedelic plant medicine therapy.
Yeah.
So then he was having issues after retiring from the fire department, and he did it. And he described to me what it did for him. And I was like, man, I'll look into it. So, of course, I blew it off for a few days. And then I had more issues at work, and he brought it up again. So I went home and I looked up the website, read the stories, realized who was running all this stuff and what they could do. And that's probably the first time in decades that I was able to sit down and really look inward and see all of the problems I was having.
Yeah.
That was out of control. The PTSD was basically running me. I would wake up at, like I said, an 8.5 on the scale. I was a hair trigger all day. I had road rage incidents that almost got me thrown in jail, come close to putting hands on people at work. And to me, this was functioning.
Right.
So
Right.
once I realized that I needed help, I started looking into these groups, and I had been through, oh God, through retirement. You know, you retire and you have those labels of PTSD, anxiety, depression. I think I had adjustment disorder. I think they actually put anger issues in my VA file, probably after a couple of conversations I had with some provider. And of course, here comes the flood of medication. So on top of everything going on, I'm taking all these meds,
Yep.
not doing what they're supposed to do because not all of those diagnoses were spot on. So it was just, I was a swirling mess. And on top of that, bourbon by the barrel.
Yeah. Right.
So I hooked in with a charity website designed for veterans. It was vetsolutions.org. They call it vets.org. It's a charity that's run by a former Navy SEAL and his wife. If people want to look it up, they can. But I just want to talk about my experience through this.
Yeah.
I don't want to speak for the charity, but I'll say that I was able to get on that website, fill out their questionnaire and their profile, describe the issues I was having. And in a relatively short period of time, they contacted me, hooked me up with mental health providers, got me through a couple of sessions, helped plan a date to travel down to Mexico to do this plant medicine. And during that time, they're getting off all of those VA medications, all the stuff that alter your brain for two reasons. One is for safety because you're going to go travel and take this other medicine. And two, it's to clear it out of your system so that the medicine can do what it's
Right.
So I was, I had been through a realm of treatments for TBIs and mental health. I had done the counseling. I had done two different TBI in-person treatments. One was a month, one was a month and a half. I had done multiple stellate ganglion blocks, getting stabbed in the neck to turn off the PTSD. All kinds of stuff.
Right.
By the time I get to this point, I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. Like we'll see if this works where all the others didn't.
Yeah.
And it worked. Like you go you go through there, you have your counseling sessions before you set your intentions on what you want this medicine to do for you. You're talking to the therapist, you get there, you're comfortable. It's a beautiful place. You have chefs cooking food. It's probably one of the few times in my life that I was able to just truly breathe, relax. Yeah. And you go through the process and you talk through everything and you set your intentions and you have a little ceremony and you take the medicine. And that was about a 14-hour ride in your own brain. And you come out of that. And
so can I ask you something? So this is something I'm confused on. So you went and when you got through all your stuff, when you started the treatment, you said it was 14 hours. Is that just a one-time thing, or you do multiple? Are you there for multiple days?
You're there for multiple days. We were there, I think 5 days. So you get there and you do some other stuff. They had like a sweat lodge to help you detox.
Yeah.
But when you do the medicine, it's a one-time thing. The medicine they use is called ibogaine. It comes out of Africa, and it's not like, and people can read up on it. And this, from my experience, it's not like the mush or the LSD or any other stuff that you see all the wavy stuff colors.
Yeah.
It activates your conscience and your subconscious at the same time. It is weird. You see some stuff. Everybody's visions are really personal. Like it brought up stuff from my childhood that I didn't even remember occurred. So your waves of emotions, and there's guys laughing in the room. You're in a room with like 4 or 5 people all doing this at the same time.
Okay.
There's guys laughing. There's guys crying. There's guys puking, and you're laying there like, oh crap, what's coming next for me? But
Right.
settle into it. You have your own experience. You come out of it. You're kind of mushy. Everybody's talking about trying to figure it out. And then comes the second medicine, which is called 5-MeO-DMT.
Yep.
It's what comes off the Sonoran desert toad. So in growing up, you always hear about the toad lickers doing
Yep.
well. This is the compound that comes off that gets secreted by that toad. They call it the God molecule. I will say that if I had to describe what it would be like to see or meet God, if that's a thing, or whatever supreme being you follow, that was it. It's hard to describe. It's the most peaceful, heavenly feeling. Like talking about it right now, I'm getting it. It was awesome, and you feel like you're in it forever. But when you wake up and you come to, they're like, "How was your 20-minute nap?" It doesn't last long like the other one, but you feel like you've been born again. So that after the ibogaine kind of puts everything together, and you feel like a whole new person. I no longer wanted to drink. Like, and they had me. You get off alcohol a couple of weeks before you show up.
Yeah.
But even going through it, I mean, hell, you're in Mexico. You're traveling through California. You want to have a drink. You feel like you're on vacation. I
Right.
did medicine. To this day, still haven't had a drink of alcohol. Don't
Wow.
have for it.
How
Um,
long ago? And how long ago was your treatment?
that was back in June,
Wow.
and I quit drinking in May. So I've been alcohol free since May.
Wow.
It turned off the anger. Like I came home and got out of the car, and my wife and kid came out to see me, and I just broke down in tears. And
Yeah.
my wife said that it was like me from 2007, 2008, walking back
Yeah.
and I have a whole new relationship with both my wife and my son. Um, it's just it's hard to describe. It reconnected a lot of stuff, turned off a lot of anger. The majority of the depression and anxiety gone. I don't have crazy dreams. I don't have keyed up moments. Something we talked before. Something would happen around me. Somebody would do something to me, and I'd be like, "Yeah, you suck as a person, and I'm gonna let you do your thing, and I'm gonna just exist over here and smile."
Yeah.
And it's wild because I still have some relatives that still like they get around me and they're waiting for me to blow up, and it's like he's not. He's normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
That's what I told you. That's what I like. My brother. It's like when I see him now, it's the same. It's like, he's older than me, and I remember him, when I was a kid and he was in high school and played college football and the whole thing. And, you know, he's always, man, he was always, everybody loves, like, he's super friendly. Always had a smile on his face just to, and man, for years after he got out, and he was like, that wasn't, I didn't even, I didn't recognize him. I talked to him and we still got along great. But when I saw him, even I saw him not long ago. He just came here for a day and had lunch and stuff. Like I said, he was 240 pounds or something when he started this whole thing. Now he's back down. He's working 190, like that, and he's smiling on his face. And I'm like, holy shit, man!
yeah,
Like that's my brother again. There he is.
after being in for so long, drinking all that time, and then retiring, I was up to about 230, 235, and now I think I just got on the scale the other day. It was 209
Yeah,
because you cut out all the drinking and the BS.
yeah,
I'm happy all the time. I'm working other jobs. I'm functioning just fine. I deal with customers in what I do now, and I'll have somebody kind of go sideways on me, and I just look at them. I'm like, okay, so where are we going from this?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
they're trying to get a reaction out of me, and they just don't get it. And they're like, "What's wrong with this guy?" And I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas the old Jeff would have probably thrown something at him.
Yeah. And that's, you and I talked about this off and, you know, people probably don't, I don't, I guess I'm probably pretty good at, I'm probably way better at hiding it than you were. but,
Yeah.
but people don't know. It's like, if people knew, the thoughts that ran, through my
Oh,
head, and like I said, it for me, this is the important part for me is talking about it because, I've told you, I'm going to get on the website and I'm going to try and take that leap too. Uh, because
yeah.
man, just that part, the anger, getting away from the anger would be life changing.
It,
And
it's cathartic. The vets.org people, they manage the people side and the charity side. They're I'm so damn thankful for them that they have this set up where they get all the donations, they fundraise, they advocate for this type of therapy, and they provide you with the money, and they link you up with the people who do the healing. And the people who do the healing is a group called Ambio. I think their website is Ambio Life. The guy that I had the most interaction there with was Trevor Millar. If you look him up, he's got a long history of providing help to people with ibogaine, and I believe he started out up in Canada, up around Vancouver. And originally, what ibogaine was used for in the United States, actually for addiction.
yeah,
It was for people getting off heroin.
yeah,
You could get somebody to go through the same process or similar process what we go through, where you have the pre-counseling and set the intentions and get them off the medicine or whatever else they're on, and then you get them there and you do it. And I've read about instances where heroin addicts, like serious heroin addicts for years, go there and they go through this process and do this drug, and it's the same as the ibogaine with DMT, and it shuts off the heroin switch.
yeah,
And when I read that, I was like, well, if it can do that for somebody in the throes of that kind of addiction, then who knows what it can do for me. And what I've read and what he's told me is that part of its success is that it's neurogen. It regenerates neurons and pathways in your brain, and kind of gets everything going in the right direction and gets everything flowing the way it's supposed to be. I was kind of skeptic of that. Through my TBIs, I lost pretty much all my sense of smell.
yeah.
And after going through this, it's not all the way, but the smell has come back about half. I'm able to smell.
And to me, I mean, all of it that you're saying is great, like the whole reset but it's shit like that, man. That's blows my mind. That like you said, and I've always been a believer. You know me. Like I said, I do my nutrition stuff. I always have. I've been into the lifting and all that, but I've always been a believer that everything that's needed to fix us is already here,
Mm-hmm.
and that it doesn't that man-made shit is actually the worst.
Yeah,
And so that's what both of these things are. These are things they've always been here.
they're
And
natural. I mean,
yeah,
ibogaine is the root of a plant.
yeah. And so why do you think, I mean, I know what my feelings are. Why do you think they don't, why won't they push that here in the States? What is, like you said, that I remember I heard somebody told me in Canada, you used to just be able to go get it over the counter. Like you could go buy it.
I can't speak for the laws in Canada. I heard that same thing. I think at one point it was not that it was totally legal, but that when they made the list of illegal drugs, it was kind of forgotten about.
Yeah.
So a lot of that over-the-counter usage was kind of being done outside.
Yeah.
But Canada caught on, and everybody had to move. The real reason that it's not kicking off in the States is the same reason that LSD, psilocybin, MDMA, and all those other drugs in this same category are not. And that goes back to Nixon getting wind of all these drugs, and you had all the hippies in California, and everybody were starting to speak out about acid and these
Yeah.
because they were actually doing research in certain parts of the world with I know LSD and psilocybin, and I believe the MDMA started later, where they were using it for therapeutic purposes. You know, different people, different effects. There were actual stories I've read about and heard where high functioning scientists, engineers would get stuck on a project like back in the 50s, and they would go do some of this stuff and sit and actually come up with solutions to their issues they were having.
Yeah.
But when the anti-war movement kicked off and it became really popular, Nixon said, put all this in a category. It's all this scheduled drug, and we're banning all of it with no regard to its whatever possibilities of good benefit come from it. It's just everything. So that made all the drug companies stop messing with it. And when the U.S. did that, a lot of other world did the same thing. So it all just kind of went dormant. Now, been long enough, attitudes are different. You're seeing, in my opinion, you're seeing the marijuana legalization. You're starting to see the psilocybin kind of legalization under therapeutic purposes. And you have a lot of people that have been working on legalization specifically for PTSD and addiction with MDMA.
Yeah.
Your therapy with people that are they're doing ketamine and are having good effects on people who have what they call drug resistant depression. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be done, and a lot of people are pushing. A lot of people are researching. But until the people in the government get around the legalization, it's a bit of a struggle. Yeah, and I don't know where the VA stands on these research purposes. I know I've talked to providers within that system who are positive about it and would like to see more research done on it, but they are constrained by a system and its associated bureaucracy.
Yeah.
But that's why you have charities that fund people to go travel to these places where you still do it and still get the benefits, both on the military and the first responder side.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we talked about. My wife works as a PA, and she treats a lot of first responders. And you guys have the same issues we're having.
Right.
And it makes sense. If you really break down the causation issues, it makes total sense. And I know the providers down in Mexico, they run, from my understanding, kind of a 3-tier approach. They have an approach for addicts, they have one approach for military people like us, and one approach for first responders. And they run them all pretty much the same. There's just different requirements to get in, especially for like the addicts. You have to be really careful medically and getting them off their drugs. But when it comes to the military and the first responders, they just get it in there, and it's just a matter of money. So I looked at the Ambio website, and they actually linked to a website for first responders that was started by the widow of a fallen New York firefighter. The website is 343fund.org.
Yeah.
That's the one I talked to you about, where it's, yep. I glanced at it. I didn't read it in depth, but I glanced at it, and it looks like it's set up to do the same thing that the .org website did, but for first responders.
Yeah. And and that was the one I looked at when you said it to me. I looked it up, and that's kind of the road I traveled down. Super interesting. And man, I don't, again, even when my brother went through it, and he even told me, oh, there's place for first responders and stuff. And I don't know why, for the life of me, maybe in my head, I'm like, I don't, how you are sometimes. It's like, I don't need that shit. I'm not that bad. And, and then,
That
but
it,
as, and I'm telling you, like, for me, this has been helpful just in the fact that us, us talking about that anger issue and you said you had that kind of that moment like, man, I didn't realize. And that's kind of the way this has been for me. It's like I, I've known, because I'm like, I literally, like I said, I come home and I'm exhausted. And I'm like, why am I so tired, man? I work, I'm in good shape. I eat, like, why am I so freaking tired? And then all this discussion we're having about, I'm like, I literally, a lot of days, I'm angry
Mhm.
from the very start. It's, just the thought of getting up and going to work. And, sometimes it's just, and so I don't know why I never went down this road before, but I know there's a reason for everything, but so here we are. I'm going to give it a shot.
Yeah, I think we discussed one time about we talked about why people don't jump on this and do it. And I know, at least on the military side, you're scared to death to even talk about this stuff because of
Right.
your. You talk about doing illegal drugs and psychedelics, especially traveling to a foreign country to do it.
Right.
Um, you're, if you're not really careful about that, your next clearance review could get a little interesting. It might take a
Yeah.
little. Um, so I imagine that's a lot of it. A lot of people just don't even want to talk about it until they retire. But then
Yeah.
retire, you get so busy with other stuff that you're not even thinking.
Yeah. Well, that Arlington firefighter I told you was a really cool conversation. It's right after you and I talked about this. And he's been down there, of course. And it was cool to hear because, like you said, my brother's experience and, my experience, even as a firefighter, taking people to the VA was never good.
Mm.
It was, and even if you watch any of the podcasts, well, the guy before you, he was a paratrooper and, and came back and now he works for the VA. And we did a podcast on, on his feelings about the VA and how, and even he was like, well, he goes, if you want to get a view of what socialized medicine looks like, go start with the VA. And so and, but, you know, it's like, I don't know, going down that road is, like you said, even that Arlington firefighters, it was cool to hear because that very thing, nobody wanted to do it because of fear of losing your job and your career and the whole thing. And he's like, the cool thing is one of their captains or somebody in his department has kind of taken the reins in this thing. He's like, this guy said, I knew I had to go because he was in that real bad mode. And he said, now they've had 11 guys. They've had 11 of their guys go down there and they're still working. The city knows they're going. And, and so I was like, man, that's good to hear. At least they're not, because usually what admin does is that they use that fear tactic on you. Like, you're scared to use your, right. You're like, and so nobody wants to say anything and nobody will do anything. So that was, to me, is a positive thing. At least I know there's departments that are doing it, you know.
And I know there's a lot of think that if you go down there and you do these drugs or these plants, because they're not drugs, they're plants, that it rewires your brain. It's going to change your personality, make you different. You're not yourself. And I'll say you're still yourself. You just get to the true self. And in regards to the PTSD, the anxiety, the depression, this isn't a magic pill. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't go down there and you do this and bloop, someone flipped a switch and you're a new guy and you're a zombie walking around with a crazy smile on your face. No, it's still there. But what it does, it gives you the tools to be able to manage it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still get mad, but now I can just go, all right,
Yeah.
we're over there.
Would you say one of the things that that guy said that he's actually jumping in and volunteering, helping with that 343 and just there, but he said that the one thing that he felt that they were missing is post therapy stuff. Do you
That,
feel like that's like there's stuff that could be done after you do the therapy that would help?
I can't say that that's my opinion from my side of it. Going through the vets charity, they have a very robust what they call integrated program. So you go, you have all the preparation, and you go and you do the medicine. But doing the preparation, doing the medicine is, in my opinion, only about 30% of the equation. The majority of the benefit you get after doing this is through the integration on the back. So
Okay.
you'll have sessions where you can sit in groups. You'll have a couple of sessions where you talk to therapists one on one, and their focus is helping you develop strategies and mechanisms to cope with what you're feeling, how to handle things when they come back up.
Yeah.
There's even times where, say, I'm having a bad day, I can reach out to them and contact a peer advisor or peer helper, whatever we call it, and you can have somebody to talk to you right away. And they're not trying to fix you; they're just listening to you and helping you remember how to manage things. And if you need it where like that in the past might have been something that would set you off for weeks. You can literally get on one of these things, talk to them or talk to someone or just listen to other people having similar issues. And it helps you snap right out of it and just kind of resets you. And eventually you get to the point where you don't have to do that all the time.
Yeah.
They make sure it's available all the time. Right before this podcast, I was reading my email and got the schedule for this week's events and next week's events, and I know exactly if I need that tool, I know exactly where to get it. But right now, I'm okay. But
Yeah.
if something happens, I know where to go. And I really think that is what makes the program successful.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd be interested to talk to him about that to see if they have something, because it would surprise me that they wouldn't have something similar for
Yeah.
first responders. I don't know why. If it's kind of like if it's the same organization you're aligned with, which it sounds like it is, they're in that alignment. I would think they would have the same treatment protocols and same post therapy protocols and things like that. I would think it'd be the same.
I think a lot of the difficulty, or what I can see is difficulty in that being, you as a patient, your schedule versus the schedule of what they're providing. Like right now with this job I have currently, there's a lot of things that don't fit into my work schedule. So it's made me ghost out of a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I can switch some things around and get in if I really needed it.
Yeah.
But I will say that if you take a look at what they're doing, it's very resource intensive. So being that from what I understand, this 343 is a little bit newer in the game compared to the charity that I went through. I think they're just still trying to get everything set up.
Yeah.
And it's going to take some time.
Yeah.
Time and
Yeah.
money.
Well, of course. I just, I hope that, I think what I'm going to do is that I kind of decided, all right, I went on the website and I'm like, I'm going to fill this stuff out. And I was like, you know what, I don't know how they'll feel about it, but I'm going to try and document my stuff and just talk about it as I start this process of filling out the forms and going through that whole process, and hopefully they look at my stuff and they're like, yeah, you're one of those guys. Come on down. I hope that's what they see. I know there's probably a criteria you have to meet.
I don't know. I never got I never got that feeling. I literally threw all my stuff in there, and there was an open essay that I wrote, just describe what I was going through. And the funny thing about that is, right now I couldn't even tell what I typed in that, because
Yeah.
that was the old me, and there's no telling what I spewed in there.
Right.
But after a while, I just got a call, and it was the first call was literally, "We got your name, we got your stuff. We feel that we can get you in. Are you still interested?" There
Yeah.
was no, give us a list of what's still wrong with you. Are you still suffering from this? Do you still take these drugs? It was literally, we're here, we can do it. Are you still? And then from there, then you go to a conversation with a medical provider, and then they're just logging everything down and figuring out what steps they need to take. But there
Yeah.
was a question in my mind, or in my experience, of whether I was qualified. It was open arms. We know you need help. You told us you need help. We're going to help.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's we'll see. I'm going to start the process and see where it goes and just kind of document the whole thing. I know they're not going to they're not going to let me put the phone in the room and watch me go through my trip, but
Yeah.
uh,
Now, there's other people in there.
uh, but it's I
It would
haven't, like I
fun
said, I'm
video.
hoping. What's that?
It wouldn't be a fun video to watch. I'll tell you that.
Probably not. But well, for firefighters and military guys, it probably would be because of that sense of humor. It'd probably be, everybody be like, "Yeah, that's pretty funny." So I tell everybody the sense of humor of my military friends and my firefighter police friends is just a little bit different than everybody else's.
Oh yeah, yeah,
But it'll, like I said, my brother has it. I told him you were coming on. I actually have another guy that was he was a ranger, and he's experienced a lot of stuff too. Uh, but he called it what did he call it? He wanted to talk about his on what he called the treatment. It wasn't like psychedelic stuff. It was unconventional treatment that he went through,
it is.
and
Yeah,
and he's experienced the same stuff you did, but his was much different. He was a ranger. He came back from a deployment and got hit by a car and almost killed him. And
oh,
and uh, and so he kind of went down these roads. And now he's a cop and he's been injured. And it's the same thing, TBIs and and but my brother hasn't. I told him y'all were coming on. I'm trying to convince him to tell his story too. And you know how it is, man. Some guys just are like, yeah, I'll see. I'll see what they do, and then I'll come on. And
yeah. I was like that for a long time. Like even good friends, even help my mother would ask me what it was and what it was like, and I'd be like, "No, I don't want to talk about it."
yeah,
Um, and I guess a couple of months ago, a switch just flipped. I was like, "Yeah, it's not that bad. Just talk about it." Because there were some dark days. Talking about the plant medicine experience is a lot easier to talk about than the days before.
right.
Especially going through the issues I was having after retirement and adjusting back to civilian life. I mean, there was never admitted to this openly, but there was a couple of times where I opened up and took a look at the gun safe.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Um, but
That's a
that's
weird feeling, man. That
yeah,
I always used to say. So I remember, I'd make those calls in the fire department, and it would infuriate me because these adults they would leave these notes and they would
yeah,
say things like, you're to my kids, I love you, and you're gonna be better off without me, and this and that. And it would infuriate me, and I'd be like, you freaking coward, leaving that note for your kids and going through that whole thing. And I never understood it, right? Until that day when I'm sitting in my one bedroom apartment, lost everything, and I got a 45 in my hand, like I don't want to do this no more.
yeah,
And it hits you like, holy shit, man. Okay, I see how you can get here now. I understand. I
yeah.
don't still don't agree with it, but I see how you get here. And, and so that's a weird feeling, man, to be in that position.
Yeah, it's. I mean, honestly, the only thing that stopped me was my son.
Yeah.
Um, but I, luckily and unluckily, after a visit to the gun safe, I chose to go back to bourbon.
Yeah.
Bourbon put me to sleep, so that was the end of that for that night. That's probably
Yeah.
the only thing that that
Well,
flew.
and yeah. And for
But
me, it was, I really, before the fire department, of course, fire department, there's no, you can't do anything like that, like weed or, marijuana or anything like that. And after I retired, in that moment, it's like, I was just doing. I was like, I'm gonna do this for fun. I haven't done it since I retired. Before I retired, I'm gonna do it.
let's go back.
And and but for me at that time, it was like, that was the thing that was like, oh, okay, I can just chill out for a minute, and actually go to sleep. And so, that's kind of, man, where it started for me. This whole, man, if that got me through, there's got to be something else, you know, and and so yeah, I'm at this, and now here we are talking about this.
Yeah,
But yeah, I completely understand that feeling, and like I said, I was, I have on my brand, I have a shirt saying this: I will bring to light what's in the dark, and people are like, "Oh, what does that mean?" And I was like, "Well, I would, went through my absolute darkest period of that, getting to that point, and then realizing, you know, that in those real bad dark places is where I had a reminder of who I was. It's like, wait a minute, you always said you're not gonna, you're a warrior in a sense, and you ain't. This is the coward way out, and you promised you would never go down that route with your kids and leave that. It's like, and so it's like, all right, well, what do we do? Well, I guess I better talk about it finally. Guess I better go see somebody and figure this shit out, or else, who knows? So you got to bring to light what's in the dark somehow to
yep,
get it out, and I guess hopefully this ibogaine, and it seems like it is the ibogaine and DMT is that very thing.
yeah, and like I said before, it's not a magic pill to me. This is my experience. It's the start of a journey. So it's able to reset you, to let you get into that integrated practice, to
Yeah,
start building your new mechanisms to help you. I hate to say hope, to help you balance what's going on in your brain and your life. And I will say that um, I'm not done,
yeah,
because after getting that clarity, it's brought to light and made me remember and start to process other things in my life that
yeah,
have um, other traumatic experiences, other stuff happened in and around the military and around when I was young. And, I still have some work to do. So I haven't decided what route I'm going to take, whether it's going to be one of the other types of therapies with maybe a psilocybin or that, or maybe I go down and do the big one again
yeah,
with the ibogaine. But I'm definitely going to do something else. I'm not done. If I was able to heal this much off this, then I don't feel like I'm at the end of my journey, and
yeah,
there's more good that can come of it. Maybe one day I'll get to a point where I'm content and I don't want to change anymore.
right,
But I feel like there's more good, and
right. I get that. Well, it's like, I tell people all the time, they'll ask me this, what is life warrior, mean to you, or where's this, and I was like, I explain to people sometimes, like when people tell me their stories like this, like, like when I'd go to work in the morning, sometimes in the fire department, I passed by these, and there were three dudes that lived under a bridge, and all three of them were ex-military guys, and they lived under that bridge by choice. They just,
Yeah.
they didn't want to not be homeless, and they liked the idea of having no responsibilities and things like that, and so I would sometimes take them coffee and donuts, and I'd sit under there and talk to them, and have these conversations with them, and that brought me a lot around a lot of this. But
Mhm.
I always tell people like, they tell me their stuff, and I'd be like, man, that's life warrior shit you're doing, and I didn't even know what that meant really at the time, and so it's those very things, right? That you're no longer in that true warrior mode where, yeah, a warrior who's trained for combat, yeah, you're in life mode. And like my brother said, that was a more difficult task
Yeah.
coming because war was way more cut and dry. And life is completely different. Real life, trying to maneuver and be a real person, a regular person again, is more of a task.
Yeah, most anything you could come across on the job, either in your realm or my realm, was somewhat controllable.
Yeah.
You could put factors in effect that kind of keep it from going sideways. Even combat operations, you know, you plan for contingencies. So there's not a lot of. I'm not going to say there's not a lot of. There's a lot, but there's not a lot of things that you can't have a solution for. Um, but after doing that for decades, life is what just threw me off a bridge mentally. I could not get grips on what was going on. I could not control anything around me. I couldn't control myself. And that was just, it was a spiral. And it got worse and worse and worse. And like I said, I was bottoming out. And luckily I got that lifeline.
Man, and I appreciate saying that because you're really the first that I mean, you described it, that whole life warrior thing. That's exactly the description. You gave a perfect description of that. It's like life is what got you. Like, it wasn't the other shit. And people forget. It's like, man, life is. I tell my kids all the time, shit. You think it's hard now? Wait till you leave this house and you're on your own. Because in that sense, it's like, I've had these conversations with my 19-year-old son. Like, you think I'm hard on you. I actually love you. And people out there, they don't give a shit about you.
Yeah.
And life doesn't give a shit about your mental battles. It doesn't care. They don't care whether you got PTSD. They don't care whether you got anxiety. I mean, rent's due, electricity's due, phone bills due, you got gas and food. It doesn't give a shit about any of that. And so, man, that's exactly why it's important when we talk about mental health shit, which it's come around more now. Thank God. I think it's been a much more.
It's come a long way. I remember early years, it was a stigma. Nobody ever wanted to talk about it. And at every point in my career, it was still something that don't go talk to those people. And a lot went back to that clearance discussion. They're going to take you out of your job. You're going to get taken off a team.
Yeah.
Do what you love to do anymore. It's going to mess up your career. Once I got my head over that, it was like, okay, everything. We're getting there. We're getting there. And I was making strides. But once retirement happened and I left all those resources and I'm out here floating in the civilian ocean, it got rough fast.
Yeah.
Those swells.
Well, I'm a good friend of mine. When I started mine, my only thought was I had a good friend of mine. He's still my good friend. He's back in the fire department now. He was one of the first ones I ever heard of because him and I saw a lot of the same calls. We rode the ambulance together, and the kids thing hit him hard. And he was the very first one to ever go say something in the fire department because it's like that unwritten rule. Suck it up, man.
Yeah.
And I remember our chief at the time, when he went and told him and gave him the whole spiel, his response was, "Hey, don't be such a pussy."
Yeah.
And not long after that, they fired his ass. They cut him loose. And he fought for 3 years to get his job. And they ended up having to give his job back. He went through lawyers and the whole thing. And so when I started holding down that process of mine, that's all I could think about. Like, keep your mouth shut, man. Just keep your damn mouth shut, because that's the road that's going to happen. You're going to go down. And so luckily, I got out in plenty of time. But at the same time, all that came to a head, and right whenever I retired, same thing. I left. Now you're on your own, and man, that was the worst. But thank God, I acknowledge the fact that I had to go see somebody. But you know as well as I do, because I'm sure you got guys you knew that they didn't do that. They made that ultimate last mistake.
Yeah. Regrettably, I've known more than and I still, even after my experience, I wouldn't say that I understand, because while I came close, I didn't. So I can't say that I was in that same state of mind. But
Yeah.
I guess if I had to say I could understand any part of it, I could understand the road to get to that point.
Yeah. That's me. I see how you get there, but I still don't. There must have been some little switch, something else that pushed them to that next level. And, that's a scary thought for me that, that there's still another level I could go to. I didn't go there.
And it's tough. I mean, it got so bad that after I retired, I basically cut off contact with any of the old guys from the military. I still, to this point, haven't talked to a lot of them until just recently. Back in November, we had kind of an impromptu reunion due to an old team leader having a retirement ceremony down in San Antonio. And it was, even though I was with guys that I was on a team with, we deployed together, we lived together, I consider them my brothers, I still had a hard time the first few minutes just talking to them. It was weird. I'd been so disconnected for so long, and I felt like I was just out by myself for so long that it was hard to deal with. So a good thing that came of that is, after talking to them and having a good time down in San Antonio with them, it's made me open up a little more. I'm starting to reach out to old buddies if they ask them about what's going on, but I've learned that I don't need to bring it up. I don't need to discuss it. If they want help, I'll help them. But it's not something you can convince somebody of. They get to that point themselves.
Yeah. The whole brotherhood thing, and like I'm the same. I got guys in the fire department that I serve that I won't ever speak to, and this is not. It's just that I think there are guys that even though you served with them and did stuff with them, you may not necessarily still align with them as a civilian, like as a regular person, and that's for me. It's like there's quite a few that we hang out, we have parties and we get together and stuff. And, but I don't think that's an abnormal thing necessarily, but, I get it. The first time I ever went and had a get together with everybody after I retired, it was, like I said, it was weird because now you feel like, how am I looked at? Like, these guys are still on the job, and, and after I broke through, it was like, all right, that's not such a bad deal. It was good to see everybody and and all that, but just a different life is, like you said, life happens. Shit happens in life, and it's just you gotta adjust.
Yeah, it was weird. I realized later that what was making me disconnect from everybody was I was ashamed because I felt like after retiring and coming home, I had become a failure. Um, so I felt like I couldn't face or talk to any of my old teammates or buddies. So I forced myself to go down to that trip, and that was almost as healing as
Yeah,
the trip I took down south for the plant. Because it showed me that I'm still okay. Matter of fact, I'm okay, and
yeah,
whatever shame I was feeling was self-induced
yeah,
because I'm still here, still kicking, still got my family,
yeah,
still making things happen, and there's no reason to be ashamed. And I took steps to make myself better and started a healing. So I went from shame to pride, and that's
yeah,
when I start to open up and start talking to people
yeah,
and teaching them that there's stuff you can do to
yeah.
help.
No, that's a good point. People ask about, you know, when I talk to people, of course, in my nutrition fitness stuff, you have those people that are hung up on I'm here at the gym and I'm embarrassed and I'm because I'm not what they look like, and I know they must be looking at me, going, "Man, what a loser and fat," And when in reality, most people that go to the gym are there because something was broken in the first place, and it's a place to go. There, you don't know what they're going through either, and most of the time, they're not. Are there cases? Yeah, but most of the time, they're not looking at you. They're not thinking anything. They're just trying to get through their stuff. And,
There's, it's a healing place.
yeah. And once people get past that in the gym, they're cool with it. But it's a hard place to be in to
Yeah,
get past because you got to keep doing it. You got to keep putting yourself in that position of man, that feeling again. Here I go again, and until you realize, oh, it's none of that I thought. So yeah, that's a good point. Well, man, it I know we're both got an interest in the event that's going on right now, and we're probably missed the whole first period, but
right.
um, we got a we got a hockey game to watch.
Yeah,
um, but man, I appreciate you coming on, and you know, man, I'm willing to have more conversations about it. If there's things to be had, but I appreciate you coming on and telling things that you hadn't told before, and kind of getting that this whole thing started, and it's gonna help. It's gonna help me too. We'll see what happens with the process, but I appreciate you taking the time and talking about all the stuff and how because hopefully this gets out and you know I'm gonna pass it along to as many people as I can, and hopefully there's guys out there just like you who are going through the same shit, and they're like, okay, there's a way out. That's the reason I started the podcast, and all the stuff in the first place was having people like you tell their story because I know there's somebody out there listening that was in the same position you were in, the anger, the all that, and they don't have a clue of how to get out. And so if it just reaches one, two, three people, then that's a win to me. So
yeah. Thanks for having me on here. And most important, thanks for having a forum to even have this discussion. Um, if you have any guys that want to discuss any further, feel free to give them my contact
yep,
information.
yeah,
And
100%.
it's not just we talk about the guys all the time. It's not just for the guys; it's for the families too. I mean,
Yep,
yeah, I can safely say that I would have lost all of it
yeah,
if I started this path. So it's important, and guys need to There's no matter how bad or low you feel, there's an option.
Yeah. And that's it. It's like, I hope that's the message. And I was telling somebody the other day, they asked me, what is your goal with this Life Warrior thing? And I said, I want to leave the legacy enough behind where this brand is so big in the world that there is a certain number every year of people who commit suicide. And I want this thing to be so big that we drastically affect that number every year.
Yep.
And, whatever that looks like. And, so I feel like hopefully this is the beginning of it. This kind of stuff we're talking about is the beginning of that, helping lower that number every year, So
one person at a time.
That's it. One at a time.
Yep.
Well, Jeff, man, I appreciate you coming on. And, like I said, I'll pass along your information if I talk to anybody. If there's anybody that you know that wants to come on the Life Warrior podcast and have their story told, and tell them to come on.
I will.
But all right, y'all. Y'all go check out the website, lifewarriorunited.com. We've got new gear coming out pretty soon. We're in the process of the artwork and doing all the mock-ups of the Life Warrior gear. So y'all go check out the website. And if you're on that website, if you just want to register and put your name in there, it'll send me an email going, hey, I got a Life Warrior story of my own. You can send that on the website. Also, all my social media stuff is on there. This YouTube link to this podcast is on there. So check out the website, and pass the YouTube along to everybody you know. That's many people as we can get this message out to, the better. So again, y'all, appreciate y'all, the support and everything. And Jeff, again, I appreciate you coming on, man. Have a good night.
Thanks.